One, two, three, four. My name is Stoic Soul. All right. I'm gonna continue reading some stuff. Jack, scoot over. Can't see, man. Sorry, my cat's in the way of my screen. Tack. Out of all times, bro. Like now, out of all times. All right. Come on, man. I'm just trying to read. Little guy. All right. So then, disinflation, deflation, productivity in the United States. An increase in the productivity means a worker can produce more goods. I already read that part. Productivity in the service sector. Clearly, the United States and other countries need to develop new measurements of productivity for the service economy that includes quality as well as quantity of output. What? For service, okay, new measures of productivity for the service economy that includes quality as well as quantity. I gotta write that down. My streaming, I am. Alright, cool. None of that matters. Alright, so productivity in the service sector. Did I write that down? No. The problem with the service industry is that the influx is that damn it, industry is that an influx of machinery may add to the quality of the service provided, but not the output per worker. For example, you probably noticed how many computers there are on college campuses. They add the quality of education, but don't necessarily boost professors' productivity. The same is true of some equipment in hospitals such as a CAT scanner, PET scanners, or MRI scanners. They improve patient care but don't necessarily increase the number of patients doctor can see. In other words, today's productivity measures in the service industry fail to capture the increase in quality caused by new technology. Clearly, the United States and other countries need to develop new measures of productivity for the service economy that include quality as well as quantity output. Despite productivity improvements, the economy is likely to go through a series of ups and downs, much as it has over the past few years. We'll explore that process. All right. Though there is technological advance advancements, they do not entirely increase quality of service provided. Come on, Tac Bro. Come on, man. Out of everything, you got to do that now. All right. Service. All right. Increase the quality of service and or productivity produced by workers such as such such as teachers or or doctors. How that happen? An example is what is the number, come on man, number of um students, oh come on, students taught by teachers or patients um gotta look at that book. Bro, stop, Tack. Patients seen by doctors. Countries will need to develop or mind. All right. Countries need to develop new measures for productivity for the service sector. Economy that include quality as well as quantity output. All right. Despite productivity improvement, the economy is likely to go through a series of ups and downs. Really? Despite productivity improvement, where am I? The economy. Let's go through a series of ups and downs, much as it has over the past years. All right, the business cycle. The business cycle are the periodic rises and falls that occur in economies over time. Economists look at a number of business cycles from seasonal business cycles from seasonal cycles that occur within a year cycle. Economist Joseph Scumpler identified the four phases of long-term business cycles as boom, recession, depression, recovery. Some I have to remember. Joseph, Scutch, and Peter identified the 4 phases of long-term Which finger do I have to use to hit that one? Oh, there you go. Pinky up. Alright, so then starting from L or semicolon, move upwards, then upwards again, diagonally upwards, upwards, upwards. Alright. Recovery, cov. Alright. Oh, my cat. All right, cool, cool. So I'm drinking Red Bull. Let me check up online and see how long it takes for it to kick in. I just finished the rest of it. To maximize the effect of Red Bull, consider the following tips: timing. Drink Red Bull when your energy levels are naturally low or when you need a boost to get through a demanding activity. Avoid consuming it late in the day or too close to bedtime to prevent disrupting your sleep. Chill your can in the fridge before consuming it for a more refreshing and invigorating experience. Access your actual energy needs and just amount consumed accordingly. For those sensitive to caffeine, starting with half a can might be better. Remember, the excessive consumption can lead to side effects such as increased heart rate, jittery, anxiety, difficulty sleeping. Stick to recommended blah blah blah. All right. Is it best to down? So it is best to down your energy drink. No wonder I wasn't feeling it. All right, let me go drink another one. Time is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. About 7 hours. One to 4 hours. The energy boosting effects of Red Bull usually kicks in 15-45 minutes of consumption. Most people experience peak energy levels around 36 minutes after drinking Red Bull, depending on individual factors. The effect during last between 1 to 4 hours. Took it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I should be able to sleep by 12. All right, let me go drink that other one. Hey, Dad, ¿cómo estás? Estoy estudiando. So vine a agarrar agua y Red Bull. Yeah. Hey, si trae comida para allá. All right. My voice is a little damaged. I don't know why, man. Sometimes it's normal, sometimes it's not. I think it's caffeine stuff. Caffeine does tend to manipulate your voice a bit. Let me just research that. That's just from my experiments. Caffeine consumption can have both positive and negative effects with your vocal health, while some sources suggest that caffeine can dehydrate the vocal cords and cause irritation. Others argue that there is no scientific evidence to support this claim. The impact of caffeine on voice is not straightforward and have very have varied from person to person. For some, moderate amount of caffeine may not significantly impact their vocal health, while for others, even a small could lead to noticeable changes in their voice. I was right. See, haha. I mean, if I talk like this, yeah, but that's not really my regular voice. All right. Hey there, everyone. My name is Stoic Soul. That's still not my normal voice. All right, man. It's hot today. All right. Boom. Recession. Depression. Joseph something. All right. Got that. Scumpeter. Scumpeter. Joseph Scumpeter did what? Identify the four phases of long term. Why is that like that? Long term. I gotta look that up again. Economist Joseph Scumpeter identified the four phases of a long term business cycles. Yeah, Joseph Scumpeter identified the four phases. The four phases. Joseph Scumpeter identified the four phases of the business cycle as I memorize that part. I'm memorizing it. That's why I'm saying it like this. Joseph Scumpeter identified the four phases of the business cycle as. Already got that memorized for now. I'll probably forget it later, but hopefully not. Joseph Scumpeter identified the four phases of the business cycle as. Dang it, the long term. Identified the four phases of long term business cycles. Let's write that down. Economist, though. He is an economist. Okay, economist Joseph Scumpeter identified the four phases of long-term business cycles as, all right, boom, recession, depression, recovery. Pokemon. Remember that, Omar? Like Pokemon. Who's a Pokemon? Joseph Scumpeter. All right. Well, what does it do? He identifies. What did he identify? He identified the four phases of a long-term business cycle. All right. What are they? Gotta remember that. Let me look. Boom, recession, depression, recovery. Boom, repression. Boom, repression. Dang it. Boom, recession. Boom, recession, depression, and recovery for attacks. Boom, recession, depression, recovery, 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 recession, depression, boom, boom, boom. All right. Boom, recovery, recession, depression, recovery, depression, recession, recovery. But is there a is it listed like not like is it listed such as is there a order that they are listed as? Seems like there are recovery, recession, depression, and recovery. Boom, recession, depression, recovery. What is it again? Economist Joseph Scumpeter. He identified, yeah, he identified the four phases of long-term business cycle as boom, recession, impression. Shit, the dumb neighbor started talking and he distracted me. Let me start over. Let me just actually continue from where I left off, then I'll start over to fix it. Whatever, man. Sorry. Boom, recession, depression, recovery. What was that again? The economist Joseph Schumpeter identified the four phases of long-term business cycles as boom, recession, depression, recovery. Yeah, got that. All right. An economy an economic boom is just what it sounds like. Business is booming. An economic boom is just is just as it sounds like. Business is booming. 2. Recession is that's cool. Recession is 2 or more consecutive quarters. Of the recession is 2 or more consecutive quarters of decline in the GDP. Recession. It is 2 or more consecutive quarters of decline in the GDP. Recession. All right, recession. What is that? Is a severe recession. Sorry, went to the wrong one. I went to depression. Sorry. Is 2 or more consecutive quarters. Recession is 2 or more consecutive quarters. All right. Recession is 2 or more consecutive quarters of decline in the GDP. Recession. It is 2 or more consecutive quarters of decline. 2 or more consecutive. Recession is 2 or more consecutive quarters of decline in the GDP. Of decline. 2 or more consecutive quarters of decline in the GDP. Recession. All right. Recession is 2 or more consecutive quarters of decline in the GDP. All right, got that. Let's go again with the economist Joseph Schumpeter without looking at the notes. The economist Joseph Schumpeter identified the 4 quarters of long-term business cycle as boom, recession, depression, and recovery. Got that memorized. I didn't forget it. Ethering that occur. Okay, periodic that occur from social cycles that occur within. Did you guys know that people who play Pokemon, right, since they were kids, they did a study around the world, a lot in Japan, but also around the world, that most of the kids who played Pokemon tend to have better memory than most other people who did not play Pokemon in adulthood. But you got to play that as a kid, by the way. It could probably work as an adult too, but yeah. They said that kids who became adults who played Pokemon when they were kids tend to have better memory skills than those who did not. Not only that, they have a certain part, a certain region of the brain that is activated and that is more developed than others who did not play Pokemon when they were kids. Did I mention I did a study on Japan video games? So Japan was combating the world. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Japan, they were combating the evil of the world. Might have been just Nintendo, but from what I know is Japan. They're combating the evil in the world through the use of entertainment and their culture. So then they combat evil through the use of influence of their entertainment or their anime. Of course, some of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, majority. I had already thought of that idea when I was younger because I noticed how I was a lot different than those other kids who would make fun of anime or of the characters that I like. Or they would say it's just a show, it's just cartoon. Oh, it's cartoon, it's for kids. But they didn't understand the power of influence. Of course, in elementary school, our teachers in James Madison, early stages, would say that it is very important to have a mentor or a hero, someone to look up to, or to someone who you could be like, similar to, or acquire some of their traits. You don't have to be exactly who they are, just get your favorite personality traits from them. Also, kids tend to be that kind of person that they are around. That's why a lot of the females at that time in education would be very picky with what males they allowed to be around the kids because they didn't want kids being just like whatever male. And the importance and usage of education, at least back then, was to create respectable members of society who could help change the world or the country. As they said, time will pass on, but their students will continue to pass on their ideals and values. That's why it's whether one of us goes down, there's still a bunch of other students that those teachers helped raise. Now then, that was in my elementary school though. My middle school they didn't really teach us that, but I'm sure they didn't need to remember to remind us that. And I do carry a lot of their ideals and values within me, such as hard work ethics. Um, yeah. For me, most of the Japanese characters that I looked up to from the anime usually were the hero. Usually they either weren't that strong in the beginning, but they worked rigorously and diligently to increase their skill, not only obviously physical strength, but also their intellectual abilities. Some of them, obviously, Ash Ketchum, Pokemon, Goku, Dragon Ball Z. I really looked up to Hiro Yui from Gundam Wing. A lot of idiots would think, oh man, he looks up to some guy who's a terrorist. Not, that's not it. They're missing the point. What I look up to from Hiro Yui is that he was known as the best of the best because he is always about the mission, about the cause. Now then, I'm not saying his cause, obviously. From that, it is just the core skill, this core skills that he has, which is what Charles Barkley said. He said Hiroyu is the perfect pilot because every move is calculated ahead of time. Before he had done any action, it has already been thought of and or exercised multiple times, where he doesn't need to think it through anymore because he has already done it before, which is experience. Such as when I told someone I was kind of like Sasuke, or when other girls in my community college when I was younger would say that I gave them Sasuke vibes. They weren't talking about, oh, this guy's a terrorist, this guy's a crazy maniac. No, they're saying this guy is smart, this guy's athletic, this guy's calm and cool and collective. But a bunch of idiots have thought that, oh man, this guy's a wannabe terrorist, man. That made me laugh. There's other ones like Light Yagami, not because of the criminal activities, obviously, not because of that. It's more of his intelligence and his core skills and his ability to be able to think and get himself out of situations that are extremely tough and almost impossible to deal with. That's what's respectable. There's a few other ones. For American cartoons, Wolverine, more because of his catchphrases. Um, the I am number one at what I do. It's like, yeah, man, that guy does his best. Spider Man, obviously, but the 1990 Spider Man, the one where he's in college, that guy looked tough. The newer Spider Mans are kind of wimpy. Let's see what else. A lot of other video game characters like Lloyd Irving, Sora, Riku from Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, Lloyd Irving from Tales of Symphonia one. I, I like Dante. That guy's cool. Time as a kid, I'm like on Devil May Cry 3. I was like, man, this guy looks cool. I'm getting distracted. Okay, you know what? That Red Bull's actually kicking in, man. I feel that. It has been about 20 minutes since I consumed the half of the other Red Bull. That's why I love drinking this kind of stuff, man. It gets me talking, it gets me kind of going within myself and my computer, or within by myself on my computer, or when I'm playing video games or drawing or doing something like that. When it has to do with the group setting, I'm still not too sure about it. I still haven't really experimented. The last two times, the anxiety did kick in, but haven't also been in a situation like that where I had to speak out loud in front of a lot of people. Usually, I don't really care about it. It's just Red Bull did do something like that. Then the next time I went without actually drinking Red Bull but coffee, the anxiety wasn't as difficult. But then again, it might just be that I'm getting used to the conditioning of being able to speak my mind around a large number of um, other community members that are within the same course or discourse or group, social group setting of education. Usually it's a little bit more nervous. Usually that adds a little bit more nervousness or a little bit anxiety when it has to do with academics, just because, at least within my assumption, is that these other students are high class, top tier, super intellectuals, where my ideas can or may not be received the same way. But the whole the whole approach is, or for me, my whole approach is always to not think of myself as the best one, as the best person, more of the worst. That way, I try harder to reach a bar or a demand in skill or idea making. Usually, my ideas are good, but it's more of hey, I haven't really expressed my ideas like that. All right, let's go ahead and do this again. All right. The economist Joseph Schumpeter, he identified the four phases of long-term business cycle as boom, recession, depression, and recovery. Boom, as it states, is that the business is booming. Recession, oh, there we go. Two more consecutive quarters of decline in the GDP. All right, man. All right. I love that, man. I got all those three down easily. No, I'm not. I'm gonna say 3/4 of difficulty on the last one. The first two, easy, man. Piece of cake. A walk in the park. All right. Now, the last one, it was freshly that was a freshly new memory, so I did struggle a little bit. I didn't really struggle, but I wasn't too confident in it. Which what is it? Which means what? It means that I don't have it fully memorized. I'm starting to slur my words from all that caffeine I'm drinking. That's what happens when I start to drink this stuff, too much of it. It's also because I'm not breathing enough. You kind of tell because my voice started going high pitched. Usually, when I start to think a lot, I sometimes forget to breathe. But that's normal. That's for everyone. It has to do with the excitement of performance. All right, I gotta calm down, man. Gotta take my shirt off. It's kind of hot. Usually, when some people are doing speeches and they're not used to it, or they're not used to expressing so much, they tend to hold their breath, just like I did. It has to do a lot with the caffeine and then the that kind of activity. All right, number three, depression. A depression is a severe recession. Depression is a severe. That's dumb, right? Recession. A depression is a severe recession. Recession. All right. Depression is a severe recession, usually accompanied by deflation. Usually accompanied by deflation. All right. Depression is a severe recession accompanied by inflation. Deflation. Deflation. Gotta go up to my notes really quick. This would help out a lot to find these quicker. Let's turn this red. Oh, is that a different color? There we go, yellow one. All right. All right, cool. Sextor. Sector. All right. Deflation means that the prices of goods and services are declining. Inflation, a general rise in the prices of goods and services over time. Rise of what? Prices? In the prices of goods. Declining. What was that? Inflation? Company with deflation. Severe recession. Two or more consecutive quarters of decline. Of decline. What the heck? Quarters of decline. in the GDP. All right, recession, but a depression is a severe recession, which is two or more consecutive quarters of decline in GDP, usually accompanied with by deflation. That doesn't sound bad. What the fuck? It sounds good for the consumer, right? Severe recession. Two or more consecutive quarters of decline in GDP. So there's less products and goods and services being made. Am I reading that right? Two or more consecutive quarters of decline in GDP. I didn't finish reading that part. The recession, prices fall. All right. People purchase fewer products and business fail. No, that doesn't make sense. In a recession, prices fall. People purchase fewer products. But don't they? Does that mean they purchase more products because the prices fall and business fail? A recession brings high unemployment, increased business failures, and an overall drop in living standards. The recession that started in 2008 is an example. I gotta write that down so I could think about that. In a recession, prices fall, which is good, right, for the consumers. People purchase fewer products and businesses fail. A recession brings high unemployment, increased business failures, and an overall drop in living standards. The recession that started in all right, let's check this out. All right. In a recession, prices fall. Which is good. People purchase fewer products and businesses fail. In a recession, a recession brings high unemployment, increased business failures, and an overall drop. Does that show both or just one? All right, cool, just one. All right. In a recession, right, prices of goods and services fall. People purchase fewer products and businesses fail. All right. in turn, it brings or is high on unemployment and increased business failures and an overall drop in living standards. Alright, so then, right, prices drop, which is good for the consumer if it is an everyday need such as food or transportation. All right. The GDP. Let's go to GDP really quick. Gross domestic product is the total values, right, of final goods and services produced. So gross domestic product is the total values, but not the overall. It's not the overall production. So then they could make 100 computers, right? And normally that would be just for easy numbers, right? For 100 computers, they make $1,000 for the year, right? But then if the price of the computer goes down to 500, right? The GDP, instead of it being 1,000, becomes 500. That's good for the consumer, but bad for the producer because he's not making as much money. Which means in order to make those $1,000, they have to double their supply and work to do that. So then, right? I get it. All right. So then, that is good for the consumer, but not good for the producer, because the producer would not want to double their hard work for that. Then again, it all depends a lot on the product and the needs or cost to produce that product. So then I believe depending on the means to create that product, right? It could be either good or bad. Like say for instance this Red Bull, right? The cost to produce a Red Bull is like $2 per 5 cans. Or using small numbers for it. Easy understanding. All right. I am talking to myself here. If the cost to produce a computer was $50 and they double it to make a $50 profit, they make $100 revenue, but $50 profit. Now, if the price of the computer starts to drop and it becomes 80 or 70 or even $60, right? They make the $60 revenue, but $10 profit. And then at the end of the day, or for the producer, right? And say it takes like 5 hours or 2 hours to create that computer, and it takes a lot of focus, right? The incentives, the motivation to want to continue doing that product isn't there anymore because they're saying it takes so much work to create this product or service that I'm only making at the end of the day $10 profit for hard work. So then at they're no longer working or doing it for themselves. They're doing it for the people, for the consumer. Now then, there's two branches of businesses that I could think of or that I create on in my deal for now. there's the producer for the people and the producer for themselves with the invisible hand. So we'll call the producer for the people the visible hand, and the producer for themselves with the invisible hand. So then, neither of them are wrong or right, obviously. If there were to be a need for a business for the people with the visible hand, that would be a government, state, or community business, because they would not be caring too much about the profit, and they would be caring more about the betterment of the community. So then I'll just write it down. Ideally, I spelled that right. I'm surprised. Wow. Ideally, I think of two types of producer. And again, none of them is good or evil or stuff like that, depending on what they do to get the. But that's going more. Um, that's going into more complications and unnecessary stuff. We're just talking about basicness right now. There's the producer for the people and the producer. Right? What is that? I don't even know the name of this. Oh, my keyboard doesn't have it. There's this like bracket that goes upwards. Alright, I'll just do that. Oh, I do have it. Looks different on my keyboard. Alright. Producer for the people. The producer for themselves. Producer for the people, right? Produces a good or service regardless of how much profit it makes, so long as it is not minus the cost to produce All right. And the good or service is made more to solve a population and community need. All right. Then there's the producer for themselves. We'll call the producer for the people with the visible hand. The producer for themselves with the invisible hand. All right, they produce a good or service to make a profit for themselves, but still solves a problem or need of the population and community. All right. Highlight that. Highlight that. All right, cool. I have a second screen up, but that's more like personal notes. All right, cool. All right, cool. I'm getting a little bit distracted, man. I'm just supposed to be reading that. Then again, I'm not supposed to be reading. I'm supposed to just be studying, which is what I'm doing. At the same time, I am kind of just going a little bit too much since I'm just gonna get asked questions about the stuff that was in the book and not the ideas I create. All right. What was that? Depression? A depression is a severe recession. I don't remember that. A depression is a severe recession with something depression accompanied by deflation. All right. A depression is a severe recession accompanied by inflation. Shit, it's deflation. Deflation. Deflate. Oh man, I'm not supposed to say that word on YouTube stream. I mean, I did set my I should be fine. I should be fine. I set my categorized for not for kids. So I should be able to at least say that word. Though from videos on YouTube, you're only allowed to say words like that in the first 7 seconds of the beginning of the YouTube video. But I don't remember about the live stream. Mature content, some dialogue, some profanity. I don't even remember if it said profanity. I know it said that's for like sexual content or mature content, such as talking about dark things in life of human life, such as depression, death, um, more serious other matters that they didn't really go into detail. But I don't remember if they said anything about being able to cuss or anything like that. I think it'll be fine as long as I don't say too many of them. I think there's a limit to how many times I could cuss. But that was on purpose. That was an accident. It was kind of like a reflex. Okay, depression. A depression is a severe recession accompanied by deflation. Deflation. All right, I got that. Recession is two or more consecutive quarters Our recession is two or more consecutive quarters. Fuck, I gotta read that again. Of decline in the GDP. Of decline in GDP. That's number two. All right, but I still remember the first part. The first part. The economist Joseph Schumpeter, all right, the economist Joseph Schumpeter identified the four stages of the four phases, the four stages, or I think phases is one of those two, of a long-term business cycle as boom, recession, depression, and recovery. Boom, the business is booming. All right. Two, recession. Recession is two or more consecutive quarters of decline in the GDP. All right, I got that. Phases for the first part, but I got that part though. Depression. A depression is a severe recession accompanied by deflation. Usually accompanied. Usually accompanied. That means it is not always, but usually does. All right. All right. It's been an hour, probably an hour and a half. But that's what usually happens when I'm taking down notes and I'm trying to create new ideas, or I want to write down some ideas of what I'm learning or reading. Usually for me, always since I was a kid, whenever I'm reading something, I start to get a lot of ideas. So that's normal. Something about geniuses getting that, but I'm not the only person, right? Obviously, a lot of other people get this too. Not everyone. That's the thing. It's not everyone that it's kind of rare, but that doesn't mean it's like, oh my god, it's like 1 out of 10. Pretty sure it's kind of higher than that. But there are few that get something they call creative or imaginative ideas or thoughts that they get when they read or do something, which is influenced off of what they're reading or doing. It's more like a suggestion, like a self suggestion. Which is what I was telling someone at work when I used to work there at the center. They were making fun of me saying that I was like schizo or something like that, that I hear voices. Which is why I'm telling you a lot of those people aren't even educated. Because I read up on that too when I was still in community college at PGC when I was much younger, the age of 22. They're not really too caught up with the ID, the ego, and superego. All right. All right, I already had those ideas, but I got those terms from the actual books at PCC library. So now I would just sit there and just think about stuff like that, more about the self. All right, let's do that again. The economist Joseph Schumpeter identified the four stages of the business cycle, of the long-term business cycle, as boom, recession, depression, and recovery. Boom, the business booming. Two, recession. Recession is two or more consecutive quarterly um, phases of the with a decline in the GDP. Deflation is a severe recession, usually accompanied by deflation. Quarters, not phases, quarters of decline in GDP. All right, I got that. I got that. All right. In a recession, prices fall. People purchase fewer products. Business fail. The businesses fail is because they probably aren't ever able to generate enough profits to for the business owner or entrepreneur to have the incentive and continue the business venture. It could also possibly be that they aren't able to produce enough revenue to cover the cost of the to continue production of the product or service. I'm surprised I did that for an hour and I get too distracted. Usually they say to take a 5 to 10 minute break, sometimes 20-minute break after an hour. I'm not gonna take that long of a break though. What is that? All right, that's a good break. Just having to listen to these annoying neighbors in the 100 apartments right next to me. You know, at least having something to say. Very uneducated, very dumb people. All they do is just drink and smoke marijuana, drinking alcohol, smoking marijuana. That's all they fucking do, sitting in their apartments, eavesdropping on my fucking devices and shit. Which is obviously illegal, but hey, Depression. Severe recession usually accompanied by deflation. Business cycles rarely go through a depression phase. Fingers were off. Business cycles rarely go through a depression phase. In fact, while there were many business cycles during the 20th century, there was only one severe depression. I can't really hit the numbers on my keyboard because I don't have it memorized yet. That was luck. Nonetheless, some economists are predicting a depression in the coming years. Alright, business cycles rarely go through depression phases. That's good. In fact, while there were many business cycles during the 20th century, there was only one severe depression. A decline in GDP. Alright, consecutive stages, 2 or more consecutive quarters of decline in GDP. A recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes and starts to grow. This eventually leads to an economic boom. Cool. A recovery occurs when the economic stabilizes and starts to grow. A recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes. Sure. A recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes and starts to grow. This eventually leads to an economic boom, starting the cycle all over again. Economic boom. All right. One goal of some economist is to predict such ups and downs. I did not know that. That is very difficult to do. That's what the book says. How do you spell that? Don't know why I'm having trouble doing this. Oopa. That is very difficult to do. Business cycles are identified according to facts, but we can't explain those facts only by using theories. All right. What the heck? Oh man, what is that? How did I do that? That's cool. I know I could do that. Like I said, comments. How did I do that? Control Z. Gotta search that up. Using the menu, place a cursor when you want to insert. Using the menu, place a cursor where you want to insert a comment. Then go to insert comment and press Control Alt C. Using the box Control Alt C. That is very cool. Wow. Did not know I could do that. All right, man. Can I make another one? I do it right there. Let's try and move it. Let's put it there. All right, cool, cool. I like that. All right. Let's see. All right. I'm glad I accidentally did that, man. Surge, okay. Not bad though. Oh heck no. Alright, time to continue. Let's just take a small break. See, my voice kind of returned a little bit back to normal. It was kind of weird earlier. Don't really know what happened. What's up with that? Seems like my voice is back. Alright. Well, well then. It almost got messed up again. Alright, I'm gonna drink some more Red Bull and see what happens. Alright, yeah, I can kind of see that now. See? It does kind of irritate my throat a little bit. I just drank a little bit and my voice went back to sounding like I did earlier. So it seems like this Red Bull really does kind of messes with my throat. And that is one of the facts or information that I read, that sometimes when you consume caffeine, it kind of irritates your throat, your vocal cords. Look at that. As soon as I drunk this, man, my voice got back to how it was earlier before I got on the stream. But after a while from taking a break from this, my voice had returned back to normal. The effect of the Red Bull was kind of wearing off too. I do kind of feel like the the feeling on my throat when I drink this, like, kind of irritates it a bit. And it is the caffeine, not the drink itself. All right. It is very difficult to do. All right, cool. Business cycle. The business cycle. Yeah, I could definitely see that with my irritation on my throat from the caffeine. All right, that is very difficult to do. One goal of the economist is to predict. All right, cool. Actually, hold on. Let me test myself out. The economist Joseph Schumpeter identified the 4 stages of long-term business cycle as boom, recession, depression, and recovery. Boom, the business is booming. Recession. 2 more consecutive quarters. Damn, is that other part? Two or more consecutive quarters. Um, with a drop in the GDP. All right, that's a recession, right? Depression. All right. Severe recession, usually accompanied by deflation. Recovery. I didn't spend time trying to memorize that. Recovery. Usually there isn't any depression, or it's rare. Yeah, it usually hasn't happened in the business cycle. Depression in the business cycle. But recovery, I'm gonna tell you this, man. I didn't even try to memorize that. Let me go back up there. Occurs when the economy stabilizes. All right, let me go back and see if I get everything. Severe recession usually accompanied by deflation. All right, of decline in the GDP. All right, man, I got that. I got all of that. Just recovery is the one I didn't spend time trying to memorize. All right, a recovery. All right, a recovery. A recovery occurs. Right, a recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes. A recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes. All right. A recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes. The economy stabilizes. When the economy stabilizes. A recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes and starts to grow. When the economy stabilizes and starts to grow. Yeah, all right. I was gonna say begin instead of starts. All right. Recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes and starts to grow. Yeah. The dumb dog kind of messed me up with his barking. I thought there was something before and starts. All right. Recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes and starts to grow. This eventually leads to an economic boom, starting the cycle all over again. This is how learning is done, little by little. Sometimes you can learn something, memorize something um, in long phrases, some of them you can't. It'll depend on the complexity of what you are learning. Also, depends how quiet it is. That's why the libraries are very quiet because you need quietness to remember, to memorize things. It is a fact proven in academy, in school, in academic institutions that learning, in order for someone to learn and retain that information longer, it has to be quiet. The more distractions, sound distractions, the harder it is to learn and remember and memorize. Elementary stuff. Okay, recovery. Recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes and starts to grow. There is more after that. This eventually leads, all right, and the economy starts to stabilize and starts to grow. This eventually, this eventually leads, this eventually leads, this eventually leads. Okay, recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes and starts to grow. This eventually leads to an economic boom. This eventually leads to an economic boom. This eventually leads to an economic boom. Starting the business cycle, starting the cycle all over again. This usually leads to an economic boom. This eventually leads to an economic boom, starting the cycle all over again. Starting the cycle all over again. This eventually leads to an economic boom and starts the business cycle and starts the cycle again. Starting the cycle all over again. Starting the cycle all over again. This eventually leads to an economic boom, starting the cycle all over again. Starting the cycle all over again. This usually leads to an economic boom, starting the cycle all over again. A recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes and again, starts to grow, starts to grow, and starts to grow. Recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes and starts to grow. This eventually leads to an economic boom and starts the cycle all over again. Starting the cycle all over again. I got that. A recovery occurs when the economy stabilizes and starts to grow. This eventually leads to an economic boom, starting the cycle all over again. All right, word by word. I remember there was this female coworker who was kind of acting conceited because she was taking some business class. No, not business class, some college classes. It was written all over her face. She thought she was too good or something. Didn't know I was much smarter than her. But I was asking her about her courses, and she couldn't really give me any details of it. She said that it's a little bit difficult to explain. That means you don't really know what you're talking about, what you're learning. Either way, I recited a few terms I've learned in my book, and she felt stupid, and she quit, and she wasn't there ever again. But there's other cool manager. His name's Dino. He used to be a police officer. Guy's very cool. He respected me a lot. He actually recited exactly what I said, and I like that. I was like, hey man, this guy's saying he's just like me. I like that. That guy was very cool. Dino is a public safety manager officer for the center. That guy was very cool. He respected me a lot, even though I didn't work for him or under his department, but I did work with him. At first, I was still kind of young, kind of not too experienced with people. So we did kind of clash a bit. And so I thought about it a little bit. I thought, hey, you know what? I could have fixed this cooperative relationship of coworkers in different departments. It's not that bad, like what I was asked. Then we became good friends. I miss that guy. He had good work ethics. One goal of some economists is to predict such ups and downs. That is very difficult to do. All right. You know what? I really need to finish reading this. I probably should stop writing down so much notes. It just read it and then I'll go back and take notes right when I have to. All right. One goal of some economists is to predict such ups and downs. That is very difficult to do. Business cycles are identified according to the facts, but we can explain those facts only by using theories. All right. All right. Next page. Not bad, man. Not bad. With certainty. But one thing is certain over time. One thing is certain over time. The economy will rise and fall as it has done lately. Hold on. I'm gonna kind of mess around. But one thing is, but one thing is certain. Over time, the economy will rise and fall as it has done lately. Since dramatic swings up and down in the economy causes all kinds of disruptions to businesses, the government tries to minimize such changes. It uses fiscal policies and monetary policy to try to keep the economy from slowing too much or growing too rapidly. Fiscal policy, it refers to the federal government's effort to keep the economy stable by increasing or decreasing taxes or government spending. The first fiscal policy tool is taxation. Theoretically, high tax rates tend to slow the economy because they draw money away from the private sector and it puts it into government. The high tax rates, it may discover small businesses ownerships because they decrease the profits business that they can earn and it makes it effortless to be rewarded. It often follows the low tax rates. It theoretically gives the economy a boost, but the federal, state, and local, it is about 28% that they gain. Will you count on all the fees and sale taxes and more taxes? All right, that's enough of fucking around. All right, I didn't learn shit that I just said. I was just trying to make it sound dramatic. I could have made it more dramatic, but it was the first time reading that. I know, I know one of the cops loved that. He's like, "Oh, that was nice." Sounded like someone was starting a something. I forgot what he said. A protest or something. I know he loved that. All right, I don't. I'm not trying to attract any attention, man. I was about to get in trouble for a moment. I was actually reading that off of a book. I was just kind of making it sound dramatic. I like that, man. I love that a lot, man. 'Cause, I was trying to be a voice actor when I was younger. Now I was trying to make it dramatic. All right. That was a good memory, man. That's the lasting memory that I'm gonna love forever. Man, that was good. Stabilizing the economy through fiscal policy. All right, we're going through fiscal. All right, I'm gonna try not to write down notes. I'll go back to notes later. Fiscal policy refers to the federal government efforts. All right, fiscal policy. That's the thing, man. If I'm trying to like memorize this and be able to explain this, I sometimes have to take it slow. Fiscal policy refers to the federal government's efforts to keep the economy stable by increasing or decreasing taxes or government spending. Fiscal policy. All right, fiscal policy. Got that. Starts to stabilize the economy, right? Keep the economy stable. Yeah, stabilize the economy. Keep it stable. And it does that by increasing or decreasing taxes or government spending. The first fiscal policy tool is taxation. Theoretically, high tax rates tend to slow the economy because they draw money away from the private sector and put it into the government. Hey, that's exactly what I said and in my class. No wonder I was starting to gain the respect of my professor. That's exactly what I said. Something about the central banking system and or something about why reducing the taxes of some companies can be good or bad. And I said it could be kind of good of reducing the taxes of some companies because it allows them to continue to grow their businesses. And I didn't even read this part, man. I still had not even read section 6, man. I was like in section 5. Not even 5. I was on 5 and I didn't finish section 5. This is what I'm telling you. I always come up with some of my, not always, I occasionally come up with some ideas way before I even read the book or a book. And I'm like, hey, man, I thought of that when someone asked me a question. I thought of something. All right, genius, man. I am a genius. Not a supercomputer, though, right? I'm not an AI bot that could create, I mean, I create good ideas and stuff, but I'm getting distracted. It follows then that low tax rates will theoretically give the economy a boost. High tax rates may discourage small business owners because they decrease the profit business can earn and make an effort rewarding. In the United States, the percentage of GDP and the government percent of GDP the government takes through taxes at all levels, federal, state, local, is about 20%. Okay. When you count all fees, sales, taxes, when you count all fees, all right, when you count all fees, sales tax, and more taxes on the highest earning citizens could exceed 50%. Is that figure too high or not high enough, in your opinion? Why? The second fiscal policy is government spending on highways, social programs, education infrastructures, roads, utilities, defense, and so on. The national deficit is the amount of money the federal government spends beyond what it gathers in taxes for a given fiscal year. Deficit spending? National deficit. Ah, national deficit. All right. The deficit is expected to be over 1 trillion for the next several years. That is a lot. A lot. The deficit is expected to be over 1 trillion for the next several years. The deficit is expected to be over 1 trillion for the next several years. Such deficit increases the national debt. The national debt is the sum of government's deficits over time. Recently, the national debt was over 14 trillion, so it's gone down 1 trillion. That's good. They reduced that by a lot. I think so. That is a rather misleading number, however, since the unfunded obligations for Medicare alone is about 34 trillion. Whoa. The unfunded debt to Social Security is on top of that. If the government takes in more revenue than it spends, if the government takes in more revenue than it spends, tax revenue is exceeding the expenditures, there is a national surplus. That is not likely to happen soon. One way to lessen deficits is to cut government spending. Many presidents and those in Congress have promised to make the government smaller. That is, to reduce government spending. But that doesn't happen very often. There seems to be a need for more social programs or more defense spending, such as for the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya each year, and thus the deficits continue to add to the national debt. Some people believe that government spending helps the economy grow. Others believe that the money the government spends comes out of the pockets of consumers and business people and thus slows growth. What do you think? Fiscal policy is actions during the economic crisis that began in 2018. Fiscal policy in action during the economic is that what the fuck that what did I say? Dang, I keep saying that word. Fiscal policy in action during the economic crisis that began in 2008. For most of his presidency, George W. Bush followed the basic economic principles of free markets. By the end of his term, however, the economy was facing a dire economic crisis, and President Bush approved the spending of almost 1 trillion of government money in an effort to revive the failing economy, including helping out banks, the auto industry, and others. $1 trillion is about 3,272 per person in the United States for like a year, for a month, every week, every month, per year. Per year, that's not bad. I wouldn't mind just giving that up if I was working class. That was just for like a year. I wouldn't mind doing that. That's not that much. President Barack Obama promised to spend additional funds. Both presidents were following the basic economic theory by Keynes discussed in the profile. As you recall, Keynesian economic theory is a theory that a government policy of increased spending and cutting taxes could stimulate the economy in a recession using monetary policy to keep the economy growing. Have you ever wondered what organization adds money to or subtract money from the economy? The answer is the Federal Reserve Bank and Reserve Bank. The Federal Reserve Bank, the Fed. The Fed is a semi-private organization that is not under the direct control of the government, but does have members appointed by the president. We will discuss the Fed in detail when we look at a banking in Chapter 20. Now we simply introduce monetary policy and the role of the Fed in controlling. Hey, that one guy gave me the wrong information about a central bank. This would be a central bank, right? The Federal Reserve Bank, I'm guessing. He said that it was elected by the people, but right here it's saying that the government or the president is the one who elects that to run the Federal Reserve Bank, which, right, is a semi-private organization. It's not under the government, but it does have members appointed by the president. So wouldn't that mean that it is government? We will discuss the Fed in detail when we look at the banking in Chapter 20. Now we simply introduce monetary policy and the role of the Fed in controlling the economy. Monetary policy is the management of the money supply and interest rates. All right, monetary policy is the management of the money supply and interest rates by the Federal Reserve Bank. Federal Reserve Bank, right, manages the money supply and interest rates by the Federal. Yeah, and raise. So the Federal Reserve Bank manages the money supply and interest rates. The Fed's most visible role is the raising and lowering of interest rates. When the economy is booming, the Feds tend to raise interest rates. This makes money more expensive to borrow. Businesses thus borrow less, and the economy slows as business people spend less money on everything they need to grow, including labor and machinery. The opposite is true. When the Fed lowers interest rates, businesses tend to borrow more, and the economy is expected to grow. Raising and lowering interest rates should therefore help control the rapid ups and downs of the economy in the 2010-11. The Fed kept interest rates near zero. Hey, I finished! Only 6 sections for this one. The past one had 8. I thought they all had 8. All right. All right. It is time. It is time. Chapter 3. That was actually a fun chapter, man. I could have finished that a lot quicker a long time ago. I just kept getting kind of distracted, but that was fun. That was a lot of fun. All right, this is chapter 3. I have some notes for chapter 3. What the heck is that, man? I was still trying to get comfortable with my typing, so there are some mistakes. It seems about right. Pretty sure that was competitive. Keep sales English. I don't even know what that is. All right. Theory of comparative and absolute advantage. I read that part. Importing, exporting. Do I have stuff like that? Where's the importing, exporting? Global market. Global market. There's a comparative and absolute advantage. Dang it. Competitive and competitive advantage and absolute advantage. There we go. Comparative advantage. Where's that? What's comparative, not competitive? All right, comparative advantage and absolute advantage. Comparative advantage and absolute advantage. Absolute advantage. Advantage of the absolute. Noel Vermillion. Don't remember how that guy said it. That guy said that. Cool. Noel Vermillion. Gene Kisaragi. That guy's a voice actor of Grimjaw Jaggerjacks. His first name's Vincent. I don't remember his last name though. That guy was such a badass, as in such a cool and amazing voice actor when he popped up first. I was like, damn, Yuri Lowenthal was like my favorite voice actor of all time. Then Johnny Bosch was like my second. But this guy's up there, man. Actually, I think Vincent might be like my second, or even close to just like being in Yuri Lowenthal's you know range up there. But the thing about Yuri Lowenthal is that you know he's always surprised me because sometimes I'll be like, oh man, this guy's cool, man. This character is cool. Um, and then all of a sudden I'd hear his scream. I'm like, hey, what the fuck? That's Yuri. What? I didn't know that was him. I thought it was a completely different guy, a completely different voice actor. What the? That happened on the Tales of the Abyss, man. When he was playing both roles of the twins. I was like, oh man, I like this guy. This character's cool. This guy sounds cool. Then I heard him scream on one of the battle cries. He was like, "Rah!" I'm like, oh, that's Yuri, bro. What the fuck, bro, man? See, man, this is why you're the best voice actor, man. I did not even know that was you. Then I heard him in Call of Duty too. I think it was a Black Ops 2. It's like frag out. I'm like, oh man, I didn't know that was him either. David Vincent, is that him? Yeah, David Vincent. All right, his first name's David. I thought his name was Vincent. All right, I got his last name right though. in this pic, wait, in this picture, he kind of looks like at a distance. He kind of looks like Pitbull, that rapper. But but that's with the shades though. That was like during high school too, man. When he popped up, I seriously thought he's gonna be in a lot more stuff because he even has a cool voice when he just talks normally as Jin Kisaragi. His battle cries are amazing, right? Okay, I gotta stop saying right. That's a little um and I gotta stop saying right and or like. Yes, and voice actor David Vincent was a very amazing voice actor, especially when he first was introduced to the public, as in the works that were being produced on television and video games. The most noticeable and most appealing traits of his voice acting to me were and are his battle screams and his regular voice that he uses when he speaks as Jin Kisaragi. Truthfully, this does take up more brain power in order for me to try to construct these sentences education in an educationally conditioned in an educationally driven manner. I managed to rid the sentence fillers that I used in the past, but at times when I become comfortable and do not think as much, or that is not what I'm trying to say, or when I am relaxed and am not filtering or being conscious and attempting to be precise with my words, I tend to say words like words such as like, uh, um, you know, man, bro. Over time, it becomes much easier to not have pauses in my wording for some that aren't or have not been in the education or that have not been in higher education, like my neighbors in the apartments of 100s right next to me, they would probably think I have some sort of mental problem or something like that. But in speech class, they say that it is good to have these pauses known as grammatical pauses instead of having fillers. At times, stretching out a word can help, but those who have been educated in speech know that there is a reason why a certain word was stretched out, such as now that I said was. And those who have not taken speech class or have not been informed or educated in speech and or presentations would think as if the person has some sort of mental problem or some sort of speech impediment. But that is something that in the higher education community textbooks or community found in their textbooks would call as a fallacy. I will continue with this theory of comparative and absolute advantage. Oh, there you go. All right, we go ahead and make these a little. All right, I kind of want to bold this. Kind of. That's something else I need to work on. Theory of comparative and absolute advantage. Us is not able to produce what? Us? What I put us? I know what that was. The U.S. is not able to produce coffee or shoes as effectively, but can produce very efficiently software engineering services. Absolute advantage is when a country is able to produce a product or service more efficiently than all other countries. I didn't write the definition word by word. I made that. Okay, I think so. Is when a country is able to produce a product or service more efficiently, because that's not what the book. I mean, that's what the book is saying, but it's not word by word. Okay, I gotta not use my own sentences, though that is the goal of higher education to be able to express ideas, theories, and other content from the educational textbooks in our own words or in our own sentence structures. But these definitions are definitely going to be word by word from the text found in the quizzes and or exams tests. All right. The theories of comparative and absolute advantage. Countries exchange more than goods and services, however, they also exchange arts, sports, cultural events, medical sciences, advances, space exploration, and labor. Comparative advantage theory suggest I made that a run-on sentence. Comparative advantage theory, suggested in the early 19th century by English economist David Ricardo, was the guiding principle that supported the idea of free economic change. Comparative advantage theory states that a country should sell to other countries those products it produces more effectively and efficiently and buy from other countries those products it cannot produce as efficiently or effectively. Changes or import exports should sell, which is export. those products that it is able to produce more efficiently. Efficiently and effectively. And effectively to other countries, right? Yeah. And buy, yeah, I know that. And buy products or services from other countries that it is not able to produce as effectively or efficiently. Pretty much. Yeah, I got that. Absolute advantage. All right, I gotta stop that. Why am I saying that? Jin Kisragi, he say absolute zero. I used to try to copy his battle cries a lot. He had another line from Grimjaw Jaggerjacks. He would be like, "Arise, Pantera!" I could do it better, but I'm not trying to be too loud. It's kind of late at night. Arise, Pantera! Something like that. He says it much cooler, obviously, and I am just copying what he said. He made up that style. That's his style. No one else that I've seen in the voice acting community ever do any battle cries the way he did. That's why I really respected him and looked up to him a lot when I was in high school. Blast Blue, Blaze Blue. I've been trying to come up with my own style in the past. Well, I did try to come up with some styles. I tried to copy. Forgot his name. Oh, it doesn't really matter. I'm getting a little distracted again. A country has absolute advantage if it has a monopoly. Man, forgot how much fun it was to use his voice acting style, man. Alright, the country has absolute advantage if it has a monopoly on producing a specific product or is able to produce it more efficiently. This guy's weird, man. I bet I could get him to this or that. Blah 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 blah. Man, that guy's so annoying. My fucking neighbor. I think he's like apartment 105, 106, something like that. Him and his freaking wife, whatever the hell she is, keeps saying he's gonna shoot me in the head or something if I don't do this or that. Officially, than all other. So I could report him to my school. Actually, that's one thing I could do. I read that if I have any problems with like community member, I can always report them to the school, and then they'll go ahead and report them to other authorities, not just the police, but other organizations within the country, the government. All right, producing. All right, a country has absolute advantage if it has a monopoly on producing a specific product, or is able to produce it more efficiently than others. However, absolute advantage is natural resources, and natural resources does not last long forever. For instance, South Africa once had an absolute advantage in diamond production. These call those the blood diamonds because they're I think they're sold by like Africa's own version of the cartels or something like that. I don't know their actual name, but I guess like gang members in Africa. But that is no longer the case. Global competition also causes other absolute advantages to fade. Today, there are very few insurance instances of absolute advantage in global markets. That's why other countries started to learn how to produce diamonds without having to buy them from Africa because they weren't supporting that kind of violence. Learned that in 11th grade, 2008 or something, 2007. Getting involved in global trade. People's interested People interested, getting involved in global trade. Getting involved in global trade. People interested in a job in global business often think they are limited to firms like Boeing, Caterpillar, or IBM, which have larger multinational accounts. However, real global job potential may be with small business. In the United States, only 1% of the 29 million small businesses export, yet they account for about 30% of total. Let me read that again. Only 1% of the 29 million small businesses export, yet they account for about 30% of the total US exports. I get that. I get that. That is actually a lot. That's very good. 1% of the 29 million small businesses, right, in the US. It's only 1%, but that 1% produces 30% of the total US exports, man. I gotta stop saying man. Okay, President Obama wants small business to think big and help double exports by 2015. That's kind of how I dated this book is. With the support of the U.S. Department of Commercial, right? With the supports of the U.S. Department of Commerce, it's expected that almost half of these businesses will become involved in global trade. With the support of the U.S. Department of Commerce, with the support of the U.S. Department, it's expected that almost half of these businesses will become involved in global trade. Getting started globally, I had to repeat that because the dumb neighbors won't shut up. Getting started globally is often a matter of observing, being determined, and taking risks. For example, several years ago, a US traveler in an African country noticed there was no ice available for drinks. I read this already. So, but I'm just gonna summarize it just so no one thinks I'm weird or anything. Um, some some guy in Africa, an African, he saw that there was no ice factories or businesses around, and they needed ice, and there is like barely any ice businesses. They're like miles away from where they needed it. So what he did is he went to other countries. Don't know if it was the U.S. or something. Let me double check. Yeah, to the U.S. right, and he got a bunch of other educated business owners or investors to invest in his business, which was an ice factory, next making business, so that um, they could sell ice to the businesses that needed ice for their drinks and or other stuff. And then he made a killing. He made a lot of money. All right. Importing goods and services. Students attending colleges and universities abroad often notice that some products widely available in their countries aren't. Okay, I read this part too. I think Korea or something like that, right? Korea. Yeah, it wasn't Korea, but um, Starbucks. One of the some traveler was at Italy or Europe and he loved the Starbucks coffee, and he went back home and he wanted to have that same experience, the Italian coffee, Italian espresso. So he brought over, he imported the Starbucks, the Italian coffee espressos into the U.S., starting with Seattle and Washington. He started to spread that around the country so that everyone else could experience it because he loved it. And the U.S. is kind of not able to produce its coffee beans and stuff in the country. Something about the environment, or not the environment, but the conditions within the environment to grow good quality coffee beans. Usually, coffee beans are found near volcanic areas, from what I've done the research from when I was younger, and we don't really have a lot of volcanoes near us, which is good for us. All right, exporting goods and services. Who would think U.S. firms could sell beer? All right, the same thing. They're trying to tell you that this American traveler was in Europe, and he was in a not state but another country that is very popular with alcohol beer, very good beer too. But he noticed that he wanted some American beer while he was traveling there, or he occasionally went there, and there are other travelers that liked it. So he imported the American beer, and it was actually successful there. Oh, and they're trying to teach you that although there is very intense and fierce competition in other countries for global marketing, or even within your country, that it doesn't mean that you aren't able to compete against them because they might actually like it. Then again, you should already know yourself that the product or service is already good. You don't want to say, "Oh man, this beer is shitty. I'm gonna sell it here and see if it sells." Nah, man. Like if you know the product's good, you know it's gonna sell good, even if there's fierce competition. All right. Spotlight on small business. A small business with a big vision. Hold on, I gotta go put this guy in his place. Take a little break. All right. Too much scrolling though. All right. Spotlight on. Oh, dang it. All right. Spotlight on small business. A small business with a big vision. When optometrist Jordan Caselo made a aid trip to Mexico, he learned firsthand how the lack of glasses affected the local workers. Losing eyesight is a silent robber of economic activity, said Caselo. Hundreds of millions of poor people lose their livelihoods in their prime working years. Caslow wanted to help the people he met, but he didn't like the idea of relying solely on donations to achieve his goal. So Caslow and partner founded Vision Spring, a business that is part charity and part small franchiser. Caslow employs mostly women needing additional income to travel around their villages selling glasses. The women buy glasses at cost from Vision Spring for $2.50 a pair and then sell them for $4 to 7 apiece. This way, Caslow is not only giving sights to those who need it most, but he is also stimulating the local economy. So far, Vision Spring has sold 600,000 pairs of basic reading glasses in 7 countries. Vision Spring still operates at a loss. However, making charitable donations a necessary part of the company's income. Caslow is making strides toward. Come on, Tack, man. I'm kind of reading. I know you want some attention, Tack, my little cat, but I am reading. Vision Spring still operates a loss, however, making charitable donations a necessary part of the company's income. Caslow is making strides towards profit towards profitability. Though Vision Spring recently opened its first store that sells higher price prescription glasses in El Salvador. A $15 pair of prescription glasses yields about 4.50 in profit, including $1 finder's fee to Caslow's local salespeople. The store made money in its first year of operation, putting Caslow one step closer to his dream of a sustainable market driven solution for vision problems in the developing world. Seems I gotta go feed my cat really quick. All right. Salesman cosmetic products is growing at twice the rate of women's due to their desire to project an image of success. Exporting also provides a terrific boost to the U.S. economy. See Fred Bergstein, Bergsten, that was German, director of Peterson Institute for International Economics, states that U.S. exports of 1.5 trillion goods and services created approximately 10 million well-paid jobs in our economy. He also estimates that every 1 billion in additional U.S. exports generates over 7,000 jobs at home. 1 billion in additional US exports generates over 7,000 jobs at home. But selling in global market and adapting products to global customers are by no means easy tasks. We discuss key forces that affects global trading later in this chapter. If you are interested in exporting, send for the basic. If you are interested in exporting, send for, what the heck does that mean, man? The Basic Guide to Exporting, a brochure from the U.S. government. All right, the Basic Guide to Exporting. If you're interested in exporting, send for the Basic Guide to Exporting, a brochure from the U.S. government, Printing Office, Superintendent of Documents, Washington, D.C. 2442. More advice is available at websites such as those sponsored by the U.S. Department of Commerce, world3.doc.gov, the Bureau of Export Administration, world3BABEA.gov, the Small Business Administration, SBA.gov, and the Small Business Exports Association. Measuring global trade. In measuring global trade, nations rely on two key indicators. In measuring global trade, damn, those stupid neighbors keep distracting me, man. In measuring global trade, all right, nations rely on two key indicators. In measuring global trade, nations rely on two key indicators: balance of trade and balance of payments. The balance of trade is the total value of nations' export compared, all right, balance of trade is the total value of a nation's exports compared to its imports measured over a particular period. Balance of trades, it's overall total value of a nation's exports. The value of their exports compared to its imports measured over a particular period. A favorable balance of trade or trade surplus occurs when the value of a country's exports exceeds that of its imports. An unfavorable balance of trade or trade deficit occurs when the value of a country's exports is less than its imports. It's easy to understand why countries prefer to export more than they import. If I sell you 200 worth of goods and buy only 100 worth, I have an extra 100 available to buy other things. However, I'm in an unfavorable position if I buy $200 worth of goods from you and sell you only 100. The balance of payments is the difference between money coming into a country. The balance of payments is the difference between money coming into the country from exports and money leaving the country for imports, plus money flows coming into or leaving a country from other factors, such as tourism, foreign aid, military expenditures, and foreign investments. You gotta read that one more time. The balance of payments. I mean, I understand it, but it's just to further solidify it in my mind. There's a difference between money coming into the country, the difference, all right, and money leaving. Not goods, right? The money. This is more of exports, which was the balance of trade, the trade surplus, and trade deficit. Balance of trades. This is balance of payments. Balance of trades, balance of payments. Opposite. Same idea. Balance of trade, balance of payments. Balance of trade is for the goods and services exported. The difference, right? Where it's the trade surplus or trade deficit. Balance of trade, balance of payments. Balance of payments, amount of money going out for exports and money going in from imports. Sorry, opposite of that. Money coming in from exports and money going out for imports. And then the other factors such as tourism, foreign aid, and military expenditures and foreign investments. The goal is to have more money flowing into the country than out, a favorable balance of payments. Conversely, an unfavorable balance of payments exists when more money is flowing out of a country than coming in. In the past, the United States exported more goods and services than it imported. However, since 1975, it has bought more goods from other nations than it has sold and thus has a trade deficit. Over the past few years, the United States ran its highest trade deficit in China.